A very important chapter for you to be able to navigate is Chapter 2, which is licensing. All right? Chapter 2, licensing. All right? I want to talk about how this chapter is organized because there are 3 or 4 chapters in this book that are organized the same way. And I like for you to be able to understand it. Remember, it's not about remembering information. It's not about remembering facts. It's about finding stuff in the book. Okay? So, we have to, it's very advantageous to understand how the chapters are organized. And that's where I want to go right away with Chapter 2. What you'll have in a few of these chapters in the book is you'll have, see there's a fellow right there, his name is Glenn Thomas, okay, well, he's an attorney, all right, and he has studied licensing law, all right, and so what he has done is he has taken licensing law and taken all the important things that he thinks is important, all right. Actually, if you have a 2017, it's somebody different. I'm not sure why. Is it still him or is he? Yeah, oh, he's lost some weight.
Looks like he shaved.
Yeah, he's doing. Okay, yeah, same guy, but he looks a lot different. Anyway, he has taken all this stuff and he's summarized it. Okay, so what I'll talk about as we go through this manual is I'll talk about a summary. There's a summary of everything, that's in the beginning. Okay, so he's summarized all this stuff. Okay, so, and then as you go, once you get through his summary of everything, then you're going to get to the word-for-word law. All right, so he didn't cover everything in the summary. So somebody writing a test question one day said, we're going to dig deep into Chapter 489 and come up with something obscure and put it on a test question. Okay, so there's a lot of questions where it's not in the summary, but it's in the law, and they put the actual word-for-word law in here. Okay, there's actually 2 laws that are in here. There's the Chapter 455, and then there's the Chapter 489. Chapter 455 is what we say is all about the board. Okay, the Florida Construction Industry Licensing Board. Okay, what is the makeup of the board? What is their responsibilities? What are their rights and duties? And they set fees as far as licensure and that type of thing. So there's all these different rules about the board. Okay, so if you don't see it in the summary, which they don't talk a lot about the board in the summary, there's a good chance it's going to be in what they call Chapter 455. Now, what I'm going to show you here is Chapter 455. This is an insert that you need. It's not really an insert, it's just a separate document. This is what you need if you have the 2017 version. Okay, I think I mentioned this earlier that they updated, between the 2017 and the 2021, they updated Chapter 455. So if you have a 2017, when you're looking for anything about Chapter 455, you're going to use this document right here. Okay? If you have the 2021, the Chapter 455 that's in your book will work. Okay? Now, the 2017 also has a Chapter 455 as well, but it's outdated. You got a question?
Well, how do you get that index? And then if you get it, do I have to bind it somehow to bring it in the test?
What usually happens is what we suggest and what I do is I bind this along with the AIA documents. Okay, and you can print this up offline. Okay, It's just Chapter 455. It's a Florida statute.
So I do have it in here, but it's worthless. I need to update it with that.
No, if you have the separate document, you have the right one.
Okay.
Okay, it's the one that's in the 2017 manual that's outdated.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Absolutely. All right. So everybody understand that concept. Okay. So you have the word for word law. Now you also have the you also have what's called Chapter 489, which is another law. So it gets a little bit confusing when you say, okay, well, we're in Chapter 2, and we're talking about Chapter 455, and we're talking about Chapter 489. Well, what understand that that's using the term chapter in a different context. Chapter 2 is the second chapter of the book. Chapter 455 is a law. Okay, that's why it's called a chapter. Chapter 489 is a law. Okay, and in all of Chapter 455 and all of Chapter 489, word for word, are printed in the book. Now, with licensing law, it even becomes a little more complicated than that, because not every specific detail of licensing regulation is addressed in the laws. Okay, so what's happened is the board has responsibility to interpret the law and create rules. All right, so what you have is a list of rules as well. So that's why we're talking about this chapter being so challenging to navigate. You've got the summary, okay? You've got Chapter 455, which is about the board. You have Chapter 489, which is about licensing. And then you have the rules that the board has come up with after that. So we'll talk about those as we go through it. Just kind of want to give you an overview of how to navigate this chapter. Okay, and it tells you about at the bottom of chapter of 2-5. We're both, regardless of what book you have right now, bottom of chapter page 2-5, it says Chapter 489. Okay, Florida statutes. Okay, licensure and regulation. Okay, it's construction, electrical and alarm, and septic tank. Okay, so there we go. Okay. A lot of this information is the same. We don't necessarily go over it in detail here. What it does tell us on page 2-6, what is construction contracting. This is page 2-6 in both books, okay? Any person who, for compensation, undertakes, submits a bid, does by himself construction, repairs, remodels, demolish, subtract from, improve. Sometimes you'll just get a definition like that. What is construction? What's considering? Okay? And then you have licensing requirements. So I'm on 2-6. I'm on page 2-6 in the 2021. For some reason, it's on page 2-14 in the 2017. Okay, and it says licensing requirement. Okay, you have something called a certified contractor, all right, and then you have something called a registered contractor. Those are two different things. All right, what you're doing in this class is you want to become a certified contractor. Any contractor who successfully passes the state administered exam obtains a certificate of competency issued by the DBPR, Department of Business and Professional Regulation. Certified contractors are allowed to contract in any city, county, or district in the state without being required to fulfill any type of competency requirements. Now, when you go to other jurisdictions, they're going to ask for your insurance, your workers' comp, maybe your local business license and something like that, but they can't require you to take a test for competency. All right? All right, now, registered contractor is something different. Okay, this is any contractor who is registered with the DBPR, that's why they call it registered, and has fulfilled the competency requirements in the city, county, or district for which the registration is issued. So this is more of a dated thing. It's more, they still do it, but it's more, the older fellows are registered. So what that means is they went to the county, they took a county test, they got their whatever license, and then they registered it with the state. That's why they call it registered. Excuse me. Okay, so certified construction contractors on page 2-7, which is on page 2-15 if you're in the 2017 book, all these things here. You got to be 18, good moral character, meet one of the following. So all these things here. 4-year college degree, in architecture, building construction, and 1 year experience, or 4 years experience. So all these different things that there's different combinations of work experience and schooling that you can have. Of course, you got to pass a test, okay, and so forth. So some good info right there that you may be responsible for. Okay. We won't spend a whole lot more time on that particular section. Okay. A little bit about electrical and alarm on 210 or 2-16 if you're in the 2017. But we don't see a lot of information that we're asked about there. Okay. So let's talk, I'm on page 2-13 of the 2021, and then you're going to want to be on page 2-17 if you're in the 2017. Okay, the DBPR, okay, and the Department of Health establish various fees, okay, for examination, registration, renewal, and other fees as appropriate. A list of fees if found in rules. Remember those rules I was telling you about? Okay, that's where you're going to find the list of fees. Okay, and so forth. All right, so there you go. Now, there is an issue. It seems like I have been asked this at many dinner parties, this medical gas certification. Okay, who can do medical gas? Well, a plumbing contractor, okay, if they take 6 hours of continuing education, okay, to teach familiarity with the NFPA standard 99C. Any plumbers in here? Okay. This is probably the trickiest one on your trade. Have you passed your trade yet? Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Lots of questions out of the 99C, the NFPA 99C?
Not as many as I thought.
Really? Okay. Well, they've changed that plumbing exam recently.
Yeah,
I'm getting
it was a lot more.
I'm getting some feedback. I'm getting some different feedback on the plumbing. That's interesting.
Too much HVAC and crap and banging and stuff in it.
Yeah.
Plumbing exam, it didn't make any sense.
There you go.
We need this.
Well, you got that mechanical code book. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to page 2-15 in the 2021, or you'll be on page 2-18 in the 2017 book. Financial responsibility, net worth. In addition to the above requirements, applicants must submit evidence of financial responsibility, credit, and business reputation. The following documentation is required. You have to have a credit report, and you have to have a financial statement, and answers to any questions, what have you. Basically, you have to have somewhere around a 660 credit score, is what they're going to look for. It doesn't actually say so here, okay?
It does. Mm-hmm.
Does it say 660?
Down there underneath.
Oh, there you go. Okay, very good. And then it could be, if not, you might have. Oh yeah, it does say 660 or higher must be payable. So if you don't have that, then you might have to post a bond. Okay, so there we go. A little bit about your finance. It used to be you actually had to have money in the bank. You actually had to have a certain amount of money in the bank, but there was some lawsuits involved with that being discriminatory, and so they changed that rule. Okay, we're going to be on page 2-16, or if you're in the 2017, you're going to be on page 2-19. These are all your public liability insurance rates. Now, this is one thing that they did fix and do a little bit better job with in this 2021. If you have the 2017, there's no table here. There's just it's just in a paragraph. And this is where you might want to, if you have the 2017, you might want to hit it in two different color highlighters, because they talk about your general and your building contractor needing 300,000 liability and 50,000 property damage. Everybody else has to have 100,000 liability and 50,000 property damage. Okay, so you got to have workers' comp as we continue to move on through. Still, basically the same page in both books, on 216, 217, and the 2021, 219 still, 2-19 in the 2017. Term of license is 2 years. It's got to be renewed every 2 years, and then you have to have continuing education. Each certified or registered contractor must complete 14 hours, and that's coming up, by the way. So what'll happen is, if you have a license or if you are getting a license, about this time every 2 years, you'll get your mailbox will fill up with everybody that is trying to sell you their continuing education. Okay. Almost everybody does it online nowadays. Okay, now, as we move through, now this is something that's worth talking about now, and we may see this as we get to the word-for-word law. Sometimes it's hard to find in there. I want you to think about this. There's a real tricky issue out there about how much time you have to spend in the classroom. All right? So, in general, it's 14 hours every 2 years of continuing education. All right. Occasionally, they get real specific about exactly how much time you have to spend in the classroom itself. So be careful about that if they get real specific. Okay. The way the rule is written is you have to spend 50 minutes of every hour in front of an instructor or online. 50 minutes, okay? Well, you take 50 minutes times 14 hours, okay? You get something like, what is 50? So is it 700? Okay? Then you divide 700 by 60 minutes, and you actually get 11 hours and 40 minutes. So your butt has to be in the seat for 11 hours and 40 minutes. So watch for that. That's a tricky question. If it's just a simple how many hours do you need 14 hours. But if they say how many actual classroom hours, they get real specific about that. It's 11 hours and 40 minutes. So anyway, business records. Okay, this is where we start to talk about how long you have to retain business records. Now this can be challenging because it depends on what type of records we're talking about. There's different rules for different types of records, okay? If the question references licensing, it's 3 years, okay? Contractors must maintain financial and business records kept in the regular course of business for the immediately preceding 3 years, okay? As you get into more specifics, we'll talk about hard records versus soft records. A soft record would be something like a timesheet. That's 2 years, okay? But in general, for licensing, it's 3 years. When you get into payroll taxes, it's 4 years. When you get into safety, when you get into OSHA, it's 5 years. So they're kind of all over the place. But if they reference licensing specifically, okay, that's going to be Chapter 2, and that's going to be 3 years. So it depends on what type of records they're talking about. That's kind of a tricky issue there. Okay, so there are exemptions. Okay, there are exemptions to licensure. A lot of people do not need a license. So in the 2021, I'm on page 2-18. On the 2017, I'm on page 2-6. For some reason, then in the 2017, the first thing they talk about is exemptions, which I never really understood that. I think they organized it better in the 2021. They talk a little about it, and then they'll tell you who's exempt. Okay, but either way, it's easy to find licensing exemptions. These people do not need a contractor's license. Now, the only difference, all the text is the same. In the 2021, they use the alphabet, A through W. And in the 2017, it's 1 through 23. Either way, these are all people that do not need licensing. Okay, so 1A is important. G, what would G be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 owners of property when acting as their own contractor. So depending on, it's either G or 7, depending on which book you have. Maybe I, 9, either I or 9, and K or number 13. I think K is 13. Okay, so all of these exemptions. There's it's very, very, very common question. Who's not exempt? You know, that's kind of a double negative question. Who is not exempt really means who has to have a license. Keep that in mind. Subcontracting requirements. So I'm on page 2-19 on the 2021, or I am on the 2-7 or 2-8 if I'm in the 2017. Subcontracting requirements. All right. Just because you're a general contractor, all right, doesn't mean you can do every single thing on the job. Okay, you're not an HVAC guy, you're not a plumber, all right, you're not a roofer, all right. So it does say a contractor has to subcontract, shall subcontract all electrical, mechanical, plumbing, roofing, sheet metal, swimming pool, and air conditioning work unless the contractor holds the state certificate in that trade. Okay, so those are subcontracting requirements. Now there are exceptions to the subcontracting requirements. Okay, so there's several exceptions as we go forward. General contractors, certified underground utility and excavation contractors may perform clearing and grubbing, grading, excavation, and other site work for a construction project. Okay, certified building contractors and certified residential contractors may perform clearing and grubbing and grading, excavation, or other site work for a construction project limited to the lot on any specific building is located. So that is not real clear, but basically what it says is if you're a general contractor, you can do site work for anybody, anywhere, anytime. If you're a building or residential, you can only do it for the projects that you're doing. Okay, you can do the site work for the projects that you build. So, now this is general building and residential contractors. So this is the next paragraph. That's either a B or a 2, depending on the book that you have. General building and residential contractors are not required to subcontract the installation or repair made under warranty of wood shingles, wood shakes, or asphalt or fiberglass shingle roofing materials on new buildings of their own construction. So you build the building, you can do the shingles, you can do the asphalt, okay? Asphalt, fiberglass, wood, or wood shakes. You do not have to subcontract. C, or 3, general contractors are not required to subcontract structural swimming pool work. Okay. Don't have to subcontract the main sewer lines. General contractors, utility lines, mobile home parks, and solar contractors are not required to subcontract the minor electrical, mechanical, plumbing, or roofing, as long as it's within the scope of their license. So there you go. So there's subcontracting requirements and there's exceptions to the subcontracting requirements. I would think that that's very important for you to understand. Okay, so we're continuing in this summary. Okay, this is still part of the summary. This is what this particular attorney felt like was important. All right. So there's a discussion of qualifying agents. Okay, and I'm on page 2-22 in the 2021, or I'm on page 2-20 in the 2017. All right, registration or certification, so on and so forth. A qualifying agent, I'm in the 3rd paragraph. The qualifying agent must be licensed as a certified or registered contractor in order for the business or organization to be certified or registered in the category for which the qualifying agent is licensed. So basically what they're saying there is generally the way that construction works is you have a company, all right? You have a corporation, you have an LLC, and you need a qualifying agent, and that's what you are going to be. You will be probably the qualifying agent for that company. Okay, so the license holder is the qualifying agent. Okay, and then it tells us what your responsibilities are. All right. Professional responsibilities. In a business entity with one qualifying agent, the qualifying agent is responsible for supervision of all operations of the business, for all field work at all sites, and unless a financial responsible officer is designated for financial matters of the organization as well. So it kind of gives you a little bit about, it kind of gives you a little information. You can have what's called an FRO, financial responsible officer. Sometimes that happens if the contractor can't, doesn't have a good credit score or something like that. They can go into business with somebody that does, and that person is what they call the FRO, financial responsible officer. Okay. The next paragraph discusses something called a secondary qualifying agent. Okay, responsible only for supervision of field work at sites where I don't know why they don't say his or her there, license was used to obtain the building permit and any other work for which he accepts responsibility. Secondary qualifying agent is not responsible for financial matters. Okay, and then the next paragraph talks about that FRO. You might want to read that. Okay, so does talk about the next paragraph, change in status of a qualifying agent is effective from the date of the change forward, will not relieve the qualifying agent of responsibility for projects that took place during the time he was the qualifying agent. Okay. As we skip a couple paragraphs, it says a qualifying agent's engagement of another to supervise the construction process will not relieve him of responsibility. In addition, a contractor may be fined up to $5,000 if an unlicensed person associated with the firm conceals material information from the firm's qualifying agent, otherwise violating Chapter 49. Okay. So we talked about primary. Now, I don't know if we actually use the term primary, but it does talk about, as we go a little bit further here, it does say definitions and talks about what a primary qualifying agent is. So that's your primary. That's the, if you've only got one, or even if you do have two, there's a primary, which is, he's the one that's more responsible for financial matters and so on and so forth. Then you have your secondary. Okay, so be aware of that. Over the next few pages, okay, we don't go into too many specifics about this, but I want you to be able to find this in case you do get a question about it. It starts at the bottom of page 2-24 or 2-8, depending on the book that you're in. 2-24 on the 2021, 2-8 in the 2017. And there's an issue about subcontractors and independent contractors. Okay. And basically, okay, you really need to be careful about miscategorizing an independent contractor versus an employee. Okay, this is something that is very important in the real world as well. Okay, and they talk about on these pages is they talk about the control that you have over somebody. If you're telling somebody when to show up and when to go home and what procedures to use and what who to have them help it. The more you control somebody's behavior, the more they are more like an employee. Okay, so be careful of that in the real world. Employees, you have to take out taxes, right? You have to match their Social Security and Medicare. You got to send all that information to the government. It's all about the money, right? Government wants their money. All right, so you have to be very careful not to classify an employee as an independent contractor, because if you call them an independent contractor and you 1099 them and they don't pay their taxes, then they're going to come back to you and they're going to say, okay, is this person really an employee or they're an independent contractor? If they determine they should have been an employee all along, then you will be responsible for all those back taxes. Okay, I'm in the marine. I was in the marine construction business. First guy I worked for when I was 17 years old decided that he was tired of doing all the paperwork and he was going to call us all independent contractors. And so he paid us. He 1099'd us for about 5 years, and everything was great till the IRS, none of the employees, independent contractors, paid their taxes, right? About 5 years down the road, IRS shows up and says, You know, what's going on here? We got all these people that you're paying that aren't paying their taxes, right? And I was no longer working for him, so I never really talked to him about what happened. Well, years later, I'm a marine contractor, and this guy calls me up. He's managing property for somebody, and he wants a dock built. Okay, so I show up and talk to him about the dock. And then I say, you know, Joe, whatever happened with, that situation with the IRS years ago? And he said, well, it's an interesting that you asked me that, because I just got a bill for $9 million. So, give you an idea of how that can escalate on you. You know, when you're talking about penalties and interest over a matter of 20 years. So the bottom line is, if they're employees, you just got to bite the bullet and treat them like employees, and you have to take out their taxes and pay the government and match their Social Security and buy the workers' comp. You know, there's plenty of work out there, so there's plenty of money out there. So do it the right way. Don't try to skirt the laws and call them independent contractors. Okay. Changes in licensure information. I'm on page either 2-29 in the 2021, or I'm on page 2-22 if you have the 2017 book. And changes in licensing information. It says 45 days. Anything that you're supposed to put on your form when you get your license originally, anything like that changes, you got to notify 45 days. Okay. License number must appear on all building permits and advertisements. Okay. All right. So, when you get through with this class, you're gonna be looking at these billboards, these contractor billboards, and wonder why they didn't put their license number on there. Okay. Grounds for disciplinary action. All these things over the next page or so are all the things that you can be disciplined for. All the things you're not supposed to do. Okay. So be aware of that. Be aware of that. Okay. Keep those in mind. Make sure that you can find those. Those will definitely come back to, you'll be responsible for that information for sure at a dinner party sometime. Okay, so I'm going to be on either page 2-32 if I'm in the 2021, or I'm going to be on page 2-26 if I am in the 2017. Okay, so this is where, all right, I was telling you that chapter 455 begins. Remember, if you're in the 2017, you should be using, at this point, that separate document, okay? Because there has been some changes, and generally, I think that may be highlighted, those changes may be highlighted on there. There's a lot of stuff about returning veterans, when returning military are getting, a little bit of a break on some of the fees and that type of thing. So keep a lookout for that kind of stuff. Okay, so we explained earlier about how the chapter was organized. We just finished the summary. All right, and now we have the word-for-word law of chapter 455. Okay, so here we go. The reason I like you to have this first page of, tabbed on either page 232 or 2-26 is this acts like a table of contents for chapter 455. You're going to find the same thing in chapter 489. So if you're looking for something in chapter 455, we can look down this list, okay, kind of cruise down this list, and we say, okay, we'll have, we got a little table of contents that's going to help us find stuff here, all right?